Okay. All right, I just resent it. I'll go ahead and start it.
Okay.
I just sent that to you. Okay, first of all, good afternoon to everyone. As Quinta said, we're looking forward to this presentation. This is something that I enjoy, and I kind of say this is like my baby. I love community development. And if you could post in the chat, those who have a 501c3, an existing one, let me know because I have a section in this presentation that I want to cover. If you need to actually start a 501c3, just briefly, we'll go over that. So the first thing is I want to define for you what community capacity is. As we think about building community capacity is the interaction of human, organizational, and social capital existing within a given community that can be leveraged to solve collective problems and improve or maintain the well-being of a given community. So as we're thinking about community capacity, I want you to think about your context and what you are planning to do within your community. Thank you for sharing that also. I see these in the comments too. Thank you. It is a wonderful thing because as the church and as faith-based organizations, it's essential that we be involved with our particular context and know what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved, who are the power players and those type of things. So that's really what I want to cover today. Quick quote. Quote says, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. So when we think about community capacity, what we're trying to do is move from abstract concepts, what we think, to concrete actualities. How do we put in place our vision and make it a modern day reality? And so that's what we want to address today. 7 questions that you definitely need to answer as an organization as you're thinking about developing. So these are my 7 strategic planning questions. Number 1, why do you exist? So in answering that question, you must answer what makes you different, or what resource do you have that another organization needs? For example, if you want to partner with another church or another faith-based organization, that faith-based organization may have the people and money. You may not, but you may have the land. So you all can collaborate to make sure that what you all are planning and what your community needs actually happens and comes to pass. Second question you need to be able to answer is, who do we serve? Because if you don't know your intent and who you want to serve, then you're going to be going in circles. So after you find out why you exist and who you serve, thirdly, you need to make sure that you be able to answer, what do we prioritize? So list everything you want to do, everything you want to accomplish. And you don't have to put it in order at the time, you just need to list it. Fourthly, how will you know if you're successful? Every business that you start, you have to have some type of measures, and you need to be able to assess yourself. Look at what's going on and be able to do that. Quinta, they can hear your background. Is there a way you can mute that? Fifth, what will our future look like? So it's important for you to understand where you're trying to go. If it was up to you, how would your future look like? Number 6, what are our top 3 goals for the next 12 to 18 months? You need to be able to outline what you plan to do and how you plan to get there. And then the last question is, what is most important right now? So based on question number 3, what do we prioritize? You'll be able to then answer number 7, which is what is important right now. Based on what the list that you put together, you can basically prioritize and say, where are we going to start? Okay, you can go to the next slide, Quinta. So for those who have a 501c3, you already have this in place. For those who do not, I just put very quickly what a 501c3 is. Tax exempt, based on what the law says. Churches are already a 501c3, but it's important that you apply for the status. You don't legally have to apply for it, but if you do not apply for it, that means that you will not have an EIN number, which is an electronic identification number. You can go to the next slide, which allows you as a church to be able to qualify, or organization to qualify for more foundation and grant opportunities. You get tax benefits. Also, for those that pay tithes and offerings, if you don't legally have an EIN number, people cannot legally use it as a tax deductible as a donor. Also, it protects you for assets protection and then postal discounts. So it's important that you do that. You go to the next one. The next thing is, as you are going through the process, it's important for you as you're developing your 501c3, 3 to 6 month process. The main thing you want to put in place: bylaws, conflict of interest policy, budget, mission statement, all that stuff. So I just placed that in there, and just in case, and I'll share this with you, but I don't really want to take a whole lot of time to do it. To make sure that you file with your state as a corporation, as I said earlier, your EIN, and then schedule your first board meeting, and then do your 1023 EZ or your long form 1023. Okay, so now let's get into the part that I really want to deal with. Let's look at the purpose. You can go to the next slide, Quinta. The purpose of your 501c3. It's important that you are able to articulate why you are existing or forming your 501c3. What need do you intend to address in your community? And in a lot of our communities, there's a lot of housing issues, poverty, food insecurity. You can address recreation needs, mentoring, all of that stuff. So as you're putting that together, going back to the questions that I asked you earlier, why do you exist? You need to be able to answer those questions, because as you're filling out your 501c3 form, part of it is putting together your preamble. And within your preamble, you need to be able to say, this is why we're forming this 501c3. Okay, question say, as a church, would you receive? Yes, you will receive a letter as a church saying that you are an official 501c3 corporation. And the difference would be that you will have ink behind it, and you will be known to your state and federal as one who can receive federal funding. So that's why it's important that you do file, because if you operate just as a basic church without applying for it, you cannot apply for any funding outside of maybe something local, donors, but not federal funds or state funds. Okay, so the next thing is, you can go to the next thing. As we look at board selection, this is very key. When you're starting off 9 to 11 members, as a congregation, your organization should have the most representation. And so if you have 9 members, 5 out of the 9 needs to be a part of your organization. The reason is it's your mission, your organization, and you need to maintain control. Board members that's needed, you always need an accountant, a lawyer, and some type of field expert. So based on what you're looking to develop, you need that field expert. So if you're getting into housing, you need someone who is a developer that understands how housing works. what type of other organizations you need to connect with that have the experience with working with contractors and builders and those type of things. So you need a field expert. I did not list this on here, but it's something that I know some organizations have, and that's a grant writer. Sometimes they have a grant writer that's a part of their board. Also, I think that it's important because I have it on my boards. I have members of the neighborhood association. Because one of the important parts is you need to make sure that you have buy-in from the community. You could want to build a senior living, or you want to build a daycare, but the city or your community may not want it. So if you don't have the buy-in from those constituents that are in your community, they may not approve it or go for it when it has to go before city council. Because when you're doing major construction like that, most of the time you have to take it to city council and it has to be approved. So it's important that you do that groundwork. You have those conversations prior to even launching anything. So having a conversation at your local church to really ask the community, what do you like to see, or what would you like to see, and what are you interested in seeing happen within your local community? Sending out surveys. I think it's best that you kind of go either door to door, not during these pandemic times, or either send out a local survey asking them, and that's something that you can get back. Okay. Let me see. The next thing is, when you're looking at selecting board members, there's about 6 things that I kind of highlight. Number 1, make sure you select people who share your sense of mission. As you're looking at those board members, if you know those persons are not interested in what you're trying to do and what you may feel God calling you to do, they may not be a good board member. So someone who has your sense of mission. Secondly, persons that possess a certain level of business or organizational competency. They don't have to know everything, but they know some things about business and about organizational competency. People that are strategic thinkers. And that's important because as you're looking at growing your organization, growing your business, you need those persons that can help you think beyond what you may see. Okay, so have those type of people around you. Fourthly, people that are willing to give their time and money. Because if you serve on board, you know that most board members have some type of dues that they pay. So you need people that are willing to pay into the vision, and that's part of it. And that's the buy-in that you get. Okay. Fifth, it's important that they understand their role. And what is their role as the board member? Governance, not management. Governance establishes mission and programs, while management actively works those programs under accountability to governance. So it's important that they understand as board members, they're not there to manage this. They're there to help govern. And the governance, as I said, establishes the mission and the programs that the organization desires to have. Okay. So it's important for that. And then the last thing, and I think this is the most important, they must be people of integrity. Because if you all are growing and you have a board member that's on the board and they're trying to make side deals, that's not going to be beneficial in looking at that. It's a question. Okay, so board members are not to be up in the mix of the day today. Absolutely. The board members most likely do not need to be in the day-to-day operations. You hire your staff for that. Staff do that part, not the board members. The board members really need to be governing the organization, not trying to manage those, because then it gets convoluted. It's going to get messy when you start doing that. So it's good that the board members do their part and your staff helps to actually run the day-to-day operations. Yes. You can go to the next slide. This is important. Build your network. So one of the first things I do when I go to any city is I have a notebook and I start building my network. In the city, who runs the city? The mayor. So make it your business to get on the mayor's calendar, to go have a conversation with that mayor to find out city plans, all of those type of things, but also so that as you go have that conversation, you can have an opportunity to express what your vision is within your local community. But it's important that you also look at what the city's 5, 10, 20-year plan is, so that way you can say, hey, I see the city is interested in doing this. This is something that I want my church to do also. How can we collaborate to make this come to pass? Also, being in conversation with your city council, chamber of commerce, state representatives, and also your federal representatives. There is monies available, and sometimes we've learned that it's not always what you know, but it's who you know. So when you make those connections, those people can help you to jumpstart your business and kind of accelerate and not go through so much of the red tape. So it's important that you make those connections. Making those connections, as I said earlier, with your neighborhood associations. It's important that you have the buy-in from your community, because that helps the project to move smoothly, and it helps the project to be able to move maybe faster than it was going to move prior to. Also, it's important to connect with your funding sources. So your local United Way, city budget, and all of that. And so in some of the cases, not with this current church, but with my last church, I work personally with the mayor, and okay, they said, can you go to the next slide? Build your network. It might just be delayed. But one of the things is I work with the mayor, and every city has a blight fund, B-L-I-G-H-T. And is it shifting now? Okay, a blight fund. So my church was here. I had a friend who pastored a Baptist church. I'm Methodist, and two prominent churches within the community. And I said to myself, why is it that most of the city is well developed, but where the two prominent Black churches are, dilapidation, blight everywhere? So we had a meeting with the mayor, and we said to him, we want to take control of all the houses on our street. Fortunately, he heard us, and the city paid for all back taxes and then turned over the dilapidated houses to the churches. So if you know those things, you can go ask those questions, and you can go say to those mayors, as I was saying, building your network, do this, and then in turn we'll do this. And so you can have that conversation with those leaders, because every city has them. So if you have some blight in your neighborhood, and you know the city wants to make a change in that particular community, go have those conversations with your mayor and other persons, and that'll happen. Also, make sure that you have a good working relationship with your local bank. One thing that my current church has is that we have a good partnership with our bank. So when it comes to anything that we need, we don't even have to go ask. They actually come to us. I never go to the bank. My bank always comes to my church to have any meetings that we have. They also approached us to say, hey, anything that you want to do, we're going to finance it, because we believe in your vision and what you want to do. So they said, fill out a particular line of credit. Now we have a line of credit, so we're able to go build and do whatever we need to do without actually taking out a loan. We borrow from ourselves, pay back ourselves. So establish that, and that will always help you. So make sure you have that. And the last thing is building your network, making sure that you partner with other faith-based organizations, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, okay? Because that's important. Let's go to the next slide. So here's some practical approaches to building community capacity. Number one, community, mapping existing community assets, skills, and capacities. Make sure you know who's in your community, what your community has, talents, skills of the residents, existing associations and networks. Know what's in your local community. Are there any institutions? We're currently partnering with our seminaries, and we're allowing them, well, they're allowing us to allow our lay in our church to get free education. So you can partner with those seminaries and any other business or institutions within your area to build capacity. Also, physical assets, your land, your building, equipment, know what you have, because you don't need it all to build your capacity. You just need some of it. So if you take the proper assessment, what you have, then you can go from there. And the last thing is learn local stories and knowledge. You have to know the history of your particular area. Right now in Rochester, I'm dealing with redlining in Rochester, how the city got to the place that it is now, that most of Blacks live in the 3rd and the 8th ward. Well, it was strategic, and based on history, I have been able to track and see how we got to the place that we are. So it's important that we know the history behind everything. Okay, secondly, the next part is the action. So after you look at mapping out the existing community assets, skills, and capacities, then it's the action part, identifying goals for action and development. So involve local people from the outset before any action takes place. Start with issues that concern them, because oftentimes it's not just about what you want, but the way you get buy-in is find out what the people want. So find out what concerns them and go from there. Secondly, find out find out your local based resources that are essential, such as neighborhood housing, so that support can be easily accessed. So as you're finding out the resources that you have, it's important to make sure you connect with those persons that can help you in that way. Next, changing the existing, looking at the culture there and helping to change the culture within your particular community. Making sure that you involve your clients or those that you're working with in the community to make sure that they are part of the decision-making process. Because as we know, oftentimes, a lot of times we want change, but we have to tear down the culture that we're faced with. Okay, make sure that we put in the adequate time and resources needed to be given over to participation in action. And then important point that I always notate is that be careful not to be over involved. We see a need, but sometimes we wear people out. So we don't want to come in. If someone has started something, it's not about us trying to take over. It's about us partnering or collaborating with a particular organizational group to help to get to the end goal, okay? And then use other people. You don't have to always use the same people. You can use other people to make that goal happen, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. I provided some resources for you all so that you can click on these links. They are live. Go to the National Council of Nonprofits, and it will take you from step 1 to 100 to highlight anything that you need, any resources, funding, all of that. Like I said, step 1 to whatever. How to get started. If you are started but need further assistance, they lay it out. Some financial resources that the churches definitely need to know. Go to the Lilly Foundation, the Lilly Endowment Foundation, United Way, or Grant Watch. Grant Watch is a great resource. It has any and every grant that is available to nonprofit faith-based organization, and it's run by the federal government. And you can research based on your state, or you can also research it based on your particular need. So say that you want to focus on family trauma, family issues, or housing. It has them all broken down. You click on it and it'll pull up every grant that's available under that particular category. So definitely use those. And then as far as the government, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and U.S. Department of Health and Human Services are great resources to use so that you can continue to build and grow your particular organization. Okay, so I want to stop there because I wanted to give us at least 15 minutes for question answer. Kind of ran through that, but now I want to hear from you and go from there. Yeah, I'm going to actually send this PowerPoint to you. So that way you all, anyone that's in there, can you send your email? Quinty, is there a way we can get their email?
Yes, we can send out this information, your PowerPoint, but if you all just want to send or drop your email in here, I can also get that and we can send it over.
Okay, that would be great because I want to make sure that I give this information to you all. Any questions? Because if you need to develop anything or kind of need help or assistance getting started. Okay, yes. Getting started, I'm here to help you. I will assist in any way to help you even get your bylaws started, conflict of interest, and all of that. So I'm a resource for that. I definitely can help you do that. Any questions? Okay, we do have a question. Ooh. Okay, so question is, how do you find what's important right now when you're in a new area? Connect with those who are familiar with that community. And so it goes back to something I was saying earlier, learning the stories. So if you find those historians or those persons who have been in the community a long time, listen to what they have to say and find out what has been a trend or a concern within that community for years. And then you can go from there. Also, you can begin to kind of look at data, do your own research on that city. For example, when I got in Rochester, there were 3 major issues that has been a problem for a long time, and that was having adequate housing. We've been having a bad time with education. Our kids are struggling. I mean, it's a bad thing when your graduation rate is not even 50%. And then the last one was housing. Oh, food insecurity, poverty. All of upstate New York, we're pretty much struggling with poverty and food insecurity. So you begin to just look and do research and find out what's going on and what are the concerns in your area. Okay. Okay, next question here says, if your church has a nonprofit that has been inactive, is it wise to rebrand it when you're Yes, you can use it as long as that existing nonprofit doesn't have any tax issues or any major hurdles. You can always go back and just rebrand it and start it. All you have to do is go to and write a request to your local state department, and then also federal, and get that information from there, and they'll send you all the paperwork on that profit. Or if you feel like you don't want to deal with it all and it's easier, just start another one. And it doesn't take that long to start another one. Okay. Okay, yes. Reverend Prince, you said you have a question. Okay, you have, okay, so which would be more beneficial, LLC or nonprofit in regard to personal ministry? The LLC is just a limited liability corporation. For ministry purpose, I feel personally that, doing a nonprofit is beneficial. because you can get everything you need developing a nonprofit. And it depends on really what you want to do. Because as I said earlier, they'll ask you to fill out 2 different forms. You'll either do your 1023 easy. That means your corporation, I think based on law, it's like $50,000 or less. But if you want to do the long form, that means you're getting into major money. I currently at my church, we have a CDC. So we have a Community Development Corporation. And so we have been applying for $1 million grants. So I knew we wanted to do that. So it took time for me and the group to actually put in that paperwork, because we knew what we're doing. We're getting into housing and that kind of stuff. So it's important that you know what you want to do. So that's where I really took you through those questions in the beginning, so that you find out, do we just want to do small local projects, or are we trying to do major funding projects? And once you find that out, that will help you determine what approach you need to take. Okay, it says, can you speak on developing strategic funding plan for nonprofits, please? Yes. So when you look at developing your strategic funding plan, find out what resources do you have. Does your church have land? You say yes or no. Okay, look within your congregation. What resources do you have as far as the people? For me, one of the things that I have is I don't have to go outside of my congregation to make any connection with any major player within the city. One of my members knows somebody, because all of them have served on those major boards. So that always gives me an inroad that I can just say, hey, can you connect me to so-and-so? And then I take from there and have the conversation there. So when you're looking at developing your strategic funding plan, look at what funds your city has available, going back to, like I said, your city budget. Also, some of the resources that I provided, or that you will get, looking at some of the grant opportunities. For example, the state of New York, Governor Cuomo invested $2 billion for housing for all nonprofits. And the beautiful thing is we have a strong Black woman as a mayor here, and she's a Christian, and she has personally connected with all of those of us who are faith-based organizations, and she's connected us with all of the developers and those corporations that are ready to build. So when you are part of what's going on within your community, if you have a mayor that's doing like mine, she's making those partnerships. You just need to make sure your paperwork is in place, so that way when you're ready to move forward, you can, and you're not being your own hindrance. That's why if you make sure that you hire the right people, because what I always do is I always hire an attorney. So all of my paperwork is always developed by our legal team. We hire attorneys, they do it right the first time, and I don't have to worry about going back trying to fix stuff or paying for having to get something, resubmitted and all of that. I like to take the approach of getting it right the first time and being done with it. So that way when I'm meeting with these investors, I can say, hey, our bylaws are straight, because our particular law firm, HSE, they filled out the stuff, and everything's good to go. And then the other thing I would say is, when you're looking at funding resources, you have, I'll say you have people who are willing to invest. They just need to know your vision and your mission behind it. Find out those people who are interested in what you want to do, because you need those philanthropists who are willing to invest in the vision. Case in point, one of the things that we found out as we were looking at housing and development within our particular area, I wanted to know who's interested in that, who wants to help this issue that we have with inadequate housing. And who has the money to back it up. So we started partnering with those who say, I have the funds and the resources to do that, and I'm willing to give you X amount of dollars. You have to find those persons and have those conversations so that they can make an investment in that. Okay. All right. Any other questions? We got like 3 minutes. Cause 2:30, right? Okay. I want to be on be on time. But I think that's the most important thing. And as I said earlier, if you need any other assistance, I'm here to definitely help you and support you through this process. And I think the last thing is my email. And it's on the last slide of the PowerPoint. So if you need to personally contact me, like I said, I will help you in whatever process you are, wherever you are, and we'll go from there. And thank you for this opportunity. And I think that's pretty much all I have
Okay.
right now.
Awesome.
Unless anybody has any other questions. Quentin, do you have any questions or anything you want to add?
Well, I do just want to remind anyone, and I think someone did put it in the chat. We do have this amazing networking feature, so you all can contact Reverend Blue directly, like without waiting for anything, or possibly on our little 15-minute break. You can go ahead and shoot him a message, and then you all can connect with him. And that's why we have such a robust platform, so that you can go ahead and network with someone right now while you're in the midst of this. You don't forget those questions, and therefore you can get the email if you did not see it or something like that. But we will be sending this out, so you will have access to it. But I just want to encourage you all to use the networking feature as well. But now I did want to say something about your thing. I really love, I think it was point one. You talked about the mapping. And so I've just kind of worked with some churches. I lived in the Atlanta metro area, and now I'm in Maryland. And one of the things I continue to see with churches is we don't look at what's already in our community. And so just that real important step of community mapping, even now in this pandemic, you can still community map like digitally. That was mentioned in a previous, I think, Dr. Lewis's presentation. Community mapping is very simple. It takes a little while if you don't have a large crew of people, but it's so important. So just I guess a little tag along, just like really look at those community assets that you already have. And then one thing that I learned just kind of doing some work in this is look at things as assets, not as our limitations. And that whole mindset shift really does help, especially when you're going into communities where the only thing they know is, strife and struggle. And that mindset will get people like, oh, this is different. This is different from the churches that have actually been here, but not have been helping us. So yeah, that's a little soapbox.
Yes. I mean, really, and that is true. Because what we did was we only work on a 2-mile radius around the church. And that may seem small, but that is a lot of ground to cover.
Yes.
And I wouldn't recommend going over to that. We started with a 5-mile radius, and it just became convoluted. I was like, oh, this is too much. So we did 2 miles. And within that 2 miles, we quickly found out that 2 of the zip codes that we covered were the most food insecure locations within walking distance. Now, where my church is, where we are affluent, influent, I literally walk across the street. It is a totally different world, just right across the street. And so you just have to, like Quentin was saying, find out exactly what's going on within your community. Mapping is so important. It would help you as you're moving forward, because what people need to see, and I close with this, the most important thing that people need to see, they need to see data. So when you approach them, you can show them this is the evidence of why this building needs to be built, or this is the evidence of why this community organization needs to be, in this place. When you have the data to prove, they can't argue. So that's important. But thank you again. Thank you all for listening. And thank you, Quinta, for assisting me.
Yes, you're welcome. Just